Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be doing my first ever tutorial on how I make my inserts. So I am using Adobe InDesign because I do have access to it from school. And I also learned how to make inserts back in the 11th grade when we used this for journalism. So starting off, we're going to pretty much create a new document. You can see how I have a bunch of documents. I love creating inserts, making new layouts and stuff. And I've been making a lot of inserts for my A5 rings. So today we're actually going to be making a monthly inserts. So starting off, you're going to create new, and this pretty much takes you to a new document, and sometimes it doesn't pop up, so you have to click at the bottom of that area. There's something called preview. So that's just to make sure that you get to see the layout before. So I do put it in millimeters first because that's how the A5 size paper is. And then I change it to inches, so my rulers will be in inches, and I know that better than metric units. And what I make sure is that the margins are 0.25 inches, and then the inside margin has to be 0.5 inches because you're going to punch into whatever you're creating if you don't put it in 0.5. So that pretty much gives you a area to punch your inserts. So before we begin, I did click on the T shape, but I'm going to create guides first because I'd rather do that first than show you how to create tables and stuff. So right here is creating a guide. So I chose to do 3 rows and then 3 columns. And then I put the gutter, that's the spacing in between each of the columns or section area, as 1/8 of an inch. So then you're just going to create or click create, and also you can click preview just in case you don't see it. So now we're going to drag and create like a text box. So the T shape is a text box, and then you're going to go to table, insert table. So what I'm going to create is 2 rows and then 1 column. So that pretty much gives me a 2 boxes or 2 rectangles, and then I'm just going to drag the bottom one down to the guide area. And then you're going to click on properties. Instead, you'll be taken to the page area. So what I want to do is change the borders to 0.1 inches. That's my favorite because it's not too thick, not too thin, and you can still see it. And I also changed the stroke color. So here I'm changing the bottom section to 0.1 as well because I want to leave the top bar or the middle section a darker line. And here if you click on the square with the color, you pretty much change the color hue of the lines. So I like 75% because it's as well not too dark but not too light. So I did make a mistake. I don't want the top bars to show or the top borders to show. So this is what it looks like after you zero out the lines. And I really like the font lemon/milk or lemon and milk light. It's really like simple and minimal. But I want the size to be smaller because it's kind of huge even for 12 points, which is, if you guys don't know, 12 points is equal to 0.25 inches. So I don't want it to be that big. I want it to be small enough or big enough to read, but small enough that it won't like take over the whole page, if that makes sense. So this is actually 1/3 of the area done. So I just put down a gold, and if you're wondering, this is similar to, or pretty much the exact match of cloth and paper, but I'm not selling this, so I'm just going to create this as a tutorial or something. And if you like, you can create this on your own because you don't technically have to spend that much money, and you can try inserts out if you like to, and then if you want to create the whole thing, you can. And one thing I just noticed is that the left-hand side is pretty much gone, so I have to edit that back, but I didn't realize until after I filmed this because I can't film a voiceover while I'm filming this, so I'm still new to all of this, so I apologize. So for the next third section, I'm going to create a pretty much a table, and all of a sudden this thing popped up out of no reason. So I'm just going to exit out. And actually, this is different from Windows and Mac. So I am using a Mac computer. So I'm not too sure if anything is different, but pretty much Adobe is all the same. There's just different key functions that are different. So here I'm just creating a column or 2 columns, and then I made 10 lines or 10 rows. So I created a table like that. And you do see that there's an extra room, so I'm going to drag it out a little, but what I did was increase the size of the width, but or decrease the font size, and then it took me it decreased that, right? And then ultimately I'm just going to drag the bottom again, and then it'll be increasing, or oh my god, use your words. And then I will click on distribute rows evenly. So that makes sure that you have 10 rows and they're all equal sizes. And then what I did for the top row is merge the whole thing because I don't need that split there. So now you see that the top is pretty much together and then the bottom is still split into 2. And I'm going to continue with the font lemon and milk. And for some reason, sometimes it doesn't read it. So yeah, that's why you can see it's a totally different font. So you just have to make sure that you click on the right font. And this font actually comes in multiple versions like bold, italics, and I really like that. And you can see how this is a little big for me, so I did end up making it smaller for both of them after I made dates and description. And then how I center it into the whole thing is you just go to alignment, and here I'm just making everything smaller because it was kind of bold for me. So I did make it into points, or 7 points. So that's like almost like half the size. And then I'm going to center it, and you can see that the area is kind of wider at the bottom. So I did decide to go to cell options, go to text, and you're just going to align center. It pretty much evens out the spacing between the top and the bottom of the area. And then I did shift over description a little because I didn't want it to butt up, but I didn't want it to be centered as well. So I did just put in a few spaces. So now to remove the borders, so I did click on the border area and then just removed it. So pretty much the border area is whatever box is around, and you can see that this is a different look. So what I wanted to do was clear out the side, the left and right hand of the border, just to zero it out. And I also wanted to make the strokes 0.1 inches as well. And then I also made the color 75%. So this is the stroke color chart, or pretty much it's always black. So when you create a table, it's always black. So what I did was change it to 75% because it's not too dark and it's not too light. And I also wanted to create pretty much a darker border around date and description, so it's not all like mixed together. So I did make that area 0.5 instead of 0.1. And then I did it as well to the column. So this is how it looks like. So now you have the box, the goals box, and then important dates. And now you want to go into the bill dues, or the bill dues. So I pretty much, instead of creating a new box, you can just reuse the old one, or reuse something that you already created instead of creating a whole new thing. So what I did was just go to edit and then duplicate the important dates box, because I'm only adding 2 things to it, I'm just splitting that area, the description area, into 3 columns instead. So you're going to click right click and then you're going to click split vertically, and then here you have the 3 columns. So if I go into preview, you pretty much see nothing because I did delete the lines. So you have to pretty much recreate those lines. So what I did was go back to my stroke area and then clicked 0.5, and then you see the lines. And I was having a little bit of difficulties because you have to make sure you do click on 0.5 as a stroke, because then it won't appear, and now it's appearing. So you can definitely tell that the description on the border is not the same, so I did have to make it lighter, and especially when you highlight the whole box, you can see there's a difference, so that's why. So now everything looks good. I forgot to change important dates until the end, so I'm sorry about that. So I did put date, or I left date, description, and then amount. And then I was trying to put a check mark to try to mimic the cloth and paper inserts. And I also wanted to make the check mark area less than the spacing, so it's not equal to the amount area, because you don't really need that big of a space to check things off. So yeah, I gave more room to the amount section. And then I centered it as well. And since you already centered it from the cell area already, you don't really need to do much in that perspective. You can just center the words. And I did have trouble with finding this, so I did have to go to highlight. So you pretty much highlight that section that you wanted to add the check mark area, and the font that has the check mark is called Wingdings 2. It's pretty much the set font that Adobe has, and you want to go to type, then go to glyphs, and then you would have this box. But for some reason this box wasn't appearing before for me, so I was having so much trouble, and it ultimately had me update my whole software, or this entire program, but good thing I did save it. So yeah. So I did have to try again to create the icon, because for some reason it wasn't, this menu wasn't popping up when I clicked it. So you have to go to type and then click on glyphs, and the check mark will be shown in the Wingdings font. So after trial and error, I had to pretty much create a text block separate, and then it finally worked. So I was able to double click it and then place it into that area. So this is pretty much the 3 sections created, and now we're going to create the one long sidebar area. So you're going to create, or click the T icon and then drag a text block all the way to the bottom. And then you're going to go to table, insert a table, and what I did was create 2 rows and then 1 column. And I originally wanted this area to be 1.25 inches, but from what I looked at from cloth and paper, they split it. So it's like the month number and then the month, and then there's like a line at the bottom, and then it goes into the line area. So I ended up just splitting the column in half, or splitting it horizontally, and then pretty much when you have the first 2 rows, the first 2 rows, it'll equal 1.25 inches. And what I wanted to make sure was the text was centered in that area, so it'll be centered within that cell area. And then I made sure that I used the same font. And I also wanted it to be centered instead of aligning it to the left-hand side. So here is the font. You can see it's pretty small, so I did have to increase it to, I believe, 40 points. So that's a little less than 0.5 inches. And then I typed in September, and I know how to spell. Sometimes when I type really fast, it just goes too fast. So yeah. And I did see that the September was pretty much really close to the number, so I tried to space it out perfectly, but I also wanted the number to be big, so I did increase it a little more to 40 points, but before I did it at 33. And don't worry, the lines won't be there because I will zero out the stroke lines for that area. And here I create that line underneath the thing instead of underlining it, the thing. So when I type it out other words, it'll still be in that same exact area. So it was a bit of a trial and error. So I was originally going to have 3 spaces, but it didn't look right, and I kind of wanted a little wider in a way. So you get to do this trial and error. You can see what you like for the look of it, but I did have to do it multiple times. So here I was just emptying out or zeroing out the stroke lines so it looks clean. So here is a zero out, and you can still see the 3 sections that I created, and I'm going to do it again and split it vertically again. And it was a little too long for my liking, so I ended up deleting one of the columns, the one of the columns, and then, but I actually did the wrong thing. I did row instead of column. So it does shift back the thing. So you just have to go back to the normal view and then distribute the columns evenly. So then here I did split up the column, or I did increase September a little. And then here I split up the area. So you split it up vertically. If you do it horizontally, that pretty much creates another row. So instead of using all 6 lines, I did the inside 4 lines, so it's still centered, and I like this look much better. So what I did was zero out the horizontal or the vertical lines in there, and then I just made sure that when I highlighted the center area, or the center space, I made sure that the top border was selected. And I did 0.5 inches, I think, or 0.5 points. And I also wanted to make sure that the stroke color was also at 75%. So now that's pretty much set. So now you have that look of the underlined, but it's not quite all the way underlined, and you get to change that area. So I didn't need the spacing between the beginning of the lines to be so far away. So I did just make the font a little smaller for that area. So it's pretty much testing it how you like the look of it. So it's pretty much trial and error for every insert. But usually I don't need to print it to see how it looks. I just like to go to preview and then see if there's something that I need to tweak. So now working on the lines officially. So you do see I have a left and right border. So I'm just going to zero out those border lines, or that stroke line. Before I insert another row, because that's easier, and it pretty much takes an effect after that row. Or if you change one thing and then you keep adding it, it'll just keep the same look. And I also changed the stroke color to 75% as well. So this is what it looks like. It's a pretty simple line, and I do make it 0.25 inches. So the width of the line is 0.25 inches, and then I pretty much increased the number of rows that was created. And I like that it matches up with important dates and stuff. So you just see that there's like a gap, but I don't want to mess it up. So instead of adding another row and then making everything smaller, I just drag the bottom and distribute the rows evenly, but oh, and sorry, I am actually going to be creating a circle icon just to check things off. So it goes back to the Wingdings font, and you pretty much see that on your as one of the icon options. So you just have to double click it. So yeah, and I was trying to change the color of it, but I couldn't find it, so it ended up making the stroke color a different color. But yeah, I didn't want to do anything. But if I do find out how to change the color of that circle, because it's pretty much straight up black, and I like something that's not too dark. So yeah. And if you're wondering if there's any spaces in between, since you don't see the screen recording, is since the lines are pretty light, sometimes it doesn't capture the full look of the lines. So that's why there's actually no spacing in between, or empty spaces, or a gap in between the lines. So here I just made the circle icon, and I pretty much copied and pasted for each of the lines. So this is pretty much the dashboard look of the first page of the monthly insert. And I tried to do it again, but I failed miserably. So we'll see if I can figure that out, and I'll let you guys know in the comments down below if there's any changes, or if I found it, or honestly if I remember it. So now moving on to the actual monthly layouts, I'm going to go to Pages, and that is on your right hand side, right next to Properties. So this is the preview look. So back to the normal look, you're going to create, I decided to create guides, but ultimately you don't need to. It's up to you. I wanted to look like, obviously, the cloth and paper ones with the two monthly calendars, and then at the end I was like, this is pointless, honestly, because I don't need to look at the dates like that. So I just created something that I would use, but I like the look of cloth and paper without the monthly calendars at the top. And it kind of seems like a waste of space because there's such a huge empty area, and for a minimal look, I don't like to have such a big empty area, so I just utilized it within the monthly calendars. So even though I created guides, I ultimately ended up deleting them. So you can just disregard these guides, because when I create the table, they're all connected. So this is just in case you don't want them connected together. So yeah. So you can see how I was contemplating if I should just cancel it, but I just ultimately pressed OK. But yeah. So now you're going to go to click on the T icon again. That is your text block. It's pretty much your favorite tool of all time. So here it's creating the monthly guidelines, and yeah, I'm going to show you how I utilized it instead of just deleting it and wasting time on my hard work. You can use it for something else. I just show it at the end of the video. So I did decide to move it onto the left-hand side because I prefer the notes column on the right-hand side because it's much easier, or my god, it's much easier to write on that side than on the left-hand side, but that's preference. But for me, I prefer the right-hand side. So what I did was create the text block to be 3 inches wide. I tried to mimic the look of cloth and paper, and I created the rows the same, and I was getting fed up because the font that I use isn't capable of having such a tiny little area. So yeah, so pretty much you can create whatever number of rows and columns. So obviously this is again trial and error, and if you notice that there is actually like a little square at the bottom of where I created those area or the table, that means there's an error. And you can also see at the bottom there's one error. That means the text block area or the text box that I created isn't big enough to hold the table. So yeah. And it's also because I did the rows. I switched the rows and the columns. It's supposed to be 8 rows and then 17 columns. So I didn't realize that until later. I was like, oh, that's why it keeps saying that there's an error. Like, you can see how I was trying to minimize the thing, and I was like, why isn't it looking correctly? And so yeah. I ultimately had to change the number of rows and the columns. I just switched them. And it does give you like, oh, you're making a change. Do you want this confirmed? Yada, yada, yada. So here is pretty much 17 columns and then 8 rows down. And it looked like a big grid, and I did have to, I did zoom in a little to how I made the thing. So this is a zoomed in look. So what I did first was merge the first column and then dealt with the numbers first. So yeah. And I also wanted to make sure that the font was all the same throughout all of the cell area. And I did try to make the font 7 points, but yeah, I was having so much trouble with this font. So until the end, I just ended up scratching it. I just left it alone for a moment after I created the box. And then at the end, I ultimately just moved them to a new page. And then maybe I'll use that for another thing. And I ended up using those monthly boxes for a year at a glance, so I didn't waste my hard work on nothing. So you can see that I was keep testing it and trying to make the box larger, and yeah, it was pretty much trial and error. And I did type in the number 1 just to see what the look was, and I didn't want to change the font, so I had to keep going and pretty much trying and remeasuring and changing up everything. So what I also did was zero out everything on the strokes because I don't want to see the lines at all because it's unnecessary. And since it's just pretty much a calendar view. So yeah. So for the first column, I don't know if I just said row when I said this. So I merged the first column together, and now I'm just highlighting it. And what I want to do is rotate the text. So you're going to right click and go to cell options, and there's something called rotate text or text rotation. So what I did was rotate it 270 degrees. And of course, when I rotate it the first time, and 180 is just flipping it upside down, if you don't know. So I didn't want the text to be facing away from the numbers. I want it to be facing towards the number, if that makes sense. So I also centered it as well. So I just put the J just in case. So here I'm putting September, but in reality it's supposed to be August because I'm making a monthly for September. So this pretty much is the basics of what you can do with InDesign. You get to create different kinds of layouts, and I don't know if just any principals uses this or any plans principals, but I will also show you how you can export the file. So yeah. So I pretty much spent at least a good 30 minutes working on this calendar, and I was just getting tired of it. I was like, nope, I'm not dealing with this anymore. So I did type out everything for August and then called it a day and then moved on to the other things. And if you see that red dot, that means the spacing isn't wide enough to hold that character or word or whatever you're typing. So you do have to make the font a little smaller. But pretty much I was like getting fed up, so I ultimately just decided to delete all the other cells and just left this pretty much for 1 month instead of having so many different areas. Because it's much easier to focus on one calendar view instead of having to copy and paste it, or it's easier to copy and paste it later. So you can see that when I added when I increased the font, the sizing was way different. And you also see the errors as well. InDesign, make sure that you notice the errors and it won't let you make that mistake. And at the bottom, if it's green, indicated no errors, that's a good sign because that means nothing's going to cut off, nothing is hiding from you or anything. So yeah. And I know a lot of people use Canva, but I honestly don't know how to use Canva. I only know how to use Adobe InDesign, and that might not be like available for everyone, but if you're definitely a college student, you pretty much have access to it at school and stuff. So definitely ask around your campus or student affairs, because I know for sure that students have access to Adobe. Because if they have access on campus grounds like the library, then they definitely would be able to provide it to the students, since we are currently working at home or pretty much having class at home and stuff. And we do have art stuff and design classes. I don't know. I was going to take a design class for one of the semesters, but honestly, I don't know why I always do this to myself. I always overtake the classes that I necessarily need for my schedule, and I don't have any free time or like a free class that I'd be able to take. So it's a sad time. But hopefully maybe next semester, but I have 15 credits that I have to take in order to graduate that I have left, which I'm pretty excited about. So yeah, I'm just going to see if I can, but because you can only take up to 18 credits, and 15 credits is a lot already because that's 5 classes, and if I do my internship class again, that's already taking up my 18 credits. So I don't know. Everything is just jumbled together again. See, here I'm just typing out all the numbers. So I did create an extra row by accident, so I ended up deleting that after I typed in all the date or the numbers for August. So you can just right click the area or highlight the area and then right click it, or you can just go to the menu on the right hand side and just delete one of the rows. So this is what it looks like. You can see that August is kind of small, so I did end up making it bold and something, or like the days of the week. And as well, you can change the Sunday start to Monday start, but I actually prefer looking at a monthly calendar as a Sunday start. That's preference. There's people in the planner community going crazy with why is the weekly view on a Monday start, but on a monthly calendar it's always a Sunday start. But when I look at regular calendars, not even in a planner or in a table format, there's always been a Sunday start. So I don't know. That's always been my preference of looking at the calendar at a Sunday start. I don't know. It's preference. So this is pretty much what it looks like on the page. And I ultimately did decide to change it up a little and make it smaller. And it's pretty much trial and error for the calendar view. So yeah, I'm not going to mess with it too much. But I did ultimately try to decrease the size. But yeah. Okay, so now getting into the monthly view, I did just drag a ruler or a guide. So if you just click on the ruler area, you can just drag some guides instead of just creating a guide. And I don't really mind the spacing in between it. So as long as it gives me enough spacing between the calendar, because I don't want it to butt up next to each other or on top of each other. So I just created another text block, and then I'm going to create a table. So I did end up using 8 columns, or 8 rows, and then 4 columns. But I ended up just changing it to 7 instead. Or no, actually, sorry. It was supposed to be 7 rows and then 4 columns. But I just ended up deleting one of the rows because it's preference, because there's some people that don't want the days of the week to be in one box, and then there's some people who rather have it on separate boxes, or that's the same thing as what I just said. They want to have the days that like for example August. So August, there's Saturday, right? Or yeah, the 1st is on a Saturday. So when you look at the calendar view, on the easy, let's say, the 30th and the 31st share a box with the 23rd and 24th. So it's preference. You can make the you can have an extra row, and then pretty much that box would have the same amount of space. So it's up to you. But for September, I didn't really need the extra row, so I ended up just discarding it. And yeah. And what I did for the top area, since I didn't need the border around the date or the days of the week that I'll be putting in later, so I just zeroed those out. And instead of making the darker border at the top, I made it at the bottom by accident, so I did have to switch it around. And of course, I'm using the same measurements and the same stroke color, so yeah. So it's 0.1 as a stroke, and then if I wanted a darker line, it would be 0.5. And I also wanted to make sure that the stroke color was also 75%. I'm not too sure if I changed that on that. And I also wanted to delete the lines on the side area as well. So now I have the darker area. And I also want to change this, make the font smaller, but I did increase it a little at the end, but those are minor changes that you can make. So yeah, now going into the days of the week, you just can type it out. Pretty much you have each section, and if you make sure that everything is centered, you don't have to worry about the spacing because it's automatic, which is awesome. So I did forget to put light, because if I don't put light, it'll just change it to something else for the font. And you can see it's a little big for me, so, or for my liking, so I ended up just making it smaller, but not too small. So 8 points is pretty good. So yeah. And since I did make the font smaller, there was an extra space, so I just utilized it. So I just evened out the rows for the days of the week, or yeah, in the monthly view. So now you can do is preview it. So this is what it looks like. So now that you have the liking, so now you're going to duplicate it. So it's much easier to do it on the other side, and it's in the edit section, not in the file. So you go to file or edit and then duplicate. So I didn't really need the fourth column on that side since it's only 7 days a week. So I did just change that up. And then when you look at it, it looks perfect. So now you have that border looking, that border look on that look like the cloth and paper inserts, but it's on the opposite side. So what I wanted to do was, instead of recreating something, you can reuse something. So since I already created pretty much the look that I like for the layout, I ended up just copy and pasting the September thing that I created, or the column that I created before, and just deleted all the circles because it's unnecessary. And I also did make the font a little smaller because I didn't need it to that bold. And I was trying to pull it in a little, but it wasn't working, so yeah. And if you just highlight the whole box, you can just delete all the circles at once. So I knew why the box wasn't going in a little. It was because that was already to the max point that it could go in. So I like also to have a space in between the lines. So instead of just butting everything up, I just made sure that I at least have like a 1/8 of an inch of a gap. So you can see now that it's butting up next to the line, and I didn't like that look because it doesn't look seamless if you look at it. So I just ended up making the column a little smaller. So now you can see there's a definite space in between. And one thing I did do is made sure where I had that line spacing equal. So this is what it looks like. You pretty much have the lines spaced out perfectly, and it pretty much equals the bottom of that line. So after so many trial and errors, I thought I had a look that I liked, but I started just putting in the numbers for September, and after I did November, or I was about to do November, I was like, I'm getting fed up because I don't have the patience to put all those dates in and be happy about it, because ultimately I'm technically not going to be using this year at a or this 2 months at a glance, because yeah, I could just easily just flip back to that page unless you have like the spacing in between and you put your weeklies in. So yeah, it's also preference. You can create this and then have it, but you don't necessarily need it. But I'm just showing you how I created this. So yeah. So now putting in the dates, of course the first is on Tuesday for September, and I am filming this on the 5th, so yeah, hopefully I can get this video edited and uploaded. And also, one more thing, I totally didn't realize that my videos were not uploading as HD videos because I do record them in HD, but when I upload it from my iMovie, apparently it only uploads it in standard definition. So the highest quality you can go is 360, and I was like, no. Until my friend told me about, oh, the highest you can go is 360, and I'm like, why? So I did have to edit and re-upload those, so that's why one of the videos I had to re-upload. So yeah. But that was pretty much the gist of it. It wasn't uploading in HD, so that's why the quality was so terrible. But I can assure you that I don't upload in terrible quality. I love seeing videos in perfect quality and high definition. So I'm sorry if you had to watch my videos in poor quality. But I don't have those footage back then. So if you're watching this now, I'm going to make sure that each of my videos is going to be in high quality. So you can see that I put in the dates, and I do have an extra row at the bottom, and I was like, I don't need this row, so I ended up deleting it. And I thought I was going to keep the lines at the bottom, or keep an empty space, but it's preference. You can leave the line at the bottom of that area, or you can just delete it, like how I'm showing you right now, because it's actually much easier to realize where the bottom of that box is instead of having to guess it. So yeah. So I did end up just deleting the row, and then what you can do is right click everything or highlight everything, and then right click and then distribute the rows evenly, so you don't have to worry about everything else being distorted. So now that everything looks distributed evenly, so this is what it looks like. You can see that the lines are there, but I don't know, I might keep them, I might not keep them, but it's preference, so you get to choose if you like to. But if you don't want to have those, you can just go to highlight the area, go to your strokes, and pretty much zero out the bottom border. So this is what it looks like. I really like how it looks, but at the end, after I did October, I was like, I'm getting tired of putting these damn numbers in. So yeah, and I also did put in Labor Day. I don't know, I ended up deleting it because that means I would have to put in every single month of the holidays, and I'm like, nope, I'd rather have a simple monthly spread that I can just quickly edit and change everything up, and you don't have to worry about making sure that the dates are correct, or making sure that the holidays are on the correct dates when you come back to this. So yeah. So I ended up just leaving it right there, but now I'm going into my pages area, and I'm going to add a page. At the bottom there's like a plus sign, so you're just going to add a page, and I'm going to go to normal view, and I'm going to create a line page because I don't need any other dashboard area. And a line page is like easier to write notes on and jot down anything. So I create 2 body rows and then I create 1 column because you don't need split columns. So I like to have the top area to have a good enough space, because I don't know, I don't like it all the way to the top, because it throws me off when I write down a subject or a title for the notes area. So I also zero out the borders for the left and right because I don't like things boxed in. I like it free flowing. So yeah, and I also changed the color to 75% and the lines to 0.5. And what I did for the top borders, I just deleted the all around. So yeah, and then I created the lines and it was perfect. So this is pretty much the layout. So you can scroll through it. So I have the dashboard, and then I have the monthly view, and here I forgot to change important dates to bills due. So yeah. But of course you can make this in different formats if you like, different sizes, but I'm just showing you how I made A5 and how I just added this page. You just pretty much go to the page that you created and just right click and then duplicate spread. It's so much faster, so much easier, and you don't have to recreate everything every single time. You just have to duplicate the page, and you have it right there. You just have to change the numbers and the dates. So yeah, and you can see how it's being really tedious when you have to change the 2 monthly calendars every single time when you have this monthly view. So I mean, Cloth and Paper is pretty much a stationery store, so they have that quality time. But when you're creating a quick insert, you don't, I don't know. It's up to you. It's preference, honestly. So I did show you how to make it, but yeah. So here I'm just typing out the numbers for October. So since it is split, when you tab it, don't tab too many times or it'll just keep taking you to the same area or the same side. It won't take you to the next side. So you pretty much have to keep clicking around. But what I like is, or I pretty much know that 3, 10, 17, 24, and 31 are always aligned. That's the because it's my birthday, so on the 24 is my birthday number, so, or birthday date, not October 24th, but in general. So when I remember that, I'm like, oh, there's only 3 more weeks for my birthday and stuff. So yeah, it's quicker to know where it is aligned with other numbers. So yeah. And you can see how I was getting a little fed up, so I ultimately decided to create a new document and just copy and paste everything. So what I did was create it in millimeters. I was supposed to put it in inches, but I will show you how I changed that later. So I copied and pasted it onto this document and then just ended up deleting it. And then I will work on it later and stuff. So here I thought I was going to just delete it, but I ended up typing out September and stuff. But I'm going to just fast forward to where I changed everything out. So here I finished up the calendar views. So this is pretty much what the final look is. Oh my gosh. I'm going to zoom out a little. So this is what it looks like. This is pretty much the monthly view, the dashboard, and September. I'm going to continue and add November and December later, but I actually just changed out the calendar view. So here I'm just going to show you the best method to saving it and exporting it. So you're going to click on, well, I clicked on my keyboard instead of showing you. So I'm going to put in, so you're going to Control Shift Save or go to File and click Save and pretty much title it out. And then you're going to go to Export. So that export is on File and then Export, or you can do Command E. And you want to make sure that pretty much the title will be the same, so it's easier. So then you're going to make sure that everything is highlighted, or pretty much you just have to make sure that Pages is selected when you look at General. So this is pretty much what it looks like when you're able to print it. So the crop marks are like the outside border. I don't know how Annie Plans Printables makes it the inside border. Maybe she uses a different software or something like that. But this is what Jasenia's Printables looks like because it's an outside border. But what I like to do is print on A5 paper because I pre-cut it instead of having it printed and then cut it. It's much easier and you don't have to worry about, oh, am I cutting this correctly? It'll just be perfect when you print it. So here I'm just changing out November, and ultimately this is where I got fed up of changing the dates because I don't know, it felt redundant to have the same month right there, you know, the month prior, and then you have to add the month later, and then for the next month you have to add the month prior, and then the next month. It was just so much work, and doing this in a tutorial is kind of like too much. So here I ended up just deleting it. But instead of just deleting this and then having to change everything else, I ended up just deleting it on September and then pretty much affixing it to there, and then I'll be able to implement the other changes when I duplicate the spreads, and all I have to do is just change the numbers and the dates. So yeah, it works out for the better good. So here I'm doing the same thing, deleting the area and then making the box or the text block bigger, and then lowering the bottom row and then distributing that row evenly. So I ultimately just deleted it. There's a delete button, so it'll tell you if you would like to delete it. If not, then because technically if you Control Z, you'll be able to retrieve that page back if you delete it by accident, but yeah. But if you do save it and then, or you delete it and then saved it, the document, you won't be able to go back to the recent change that you made. So just be wary about that. So this is what it looks like. So yeah. So here I'm just duplicating those pages. And I'm just deleting the numbers. So I ended up just doing for October, and then I'm going to work on the year at a glance. So Thursday, or October started on a Thursday. And I also wanted to make one more change because I felt like the numbers were a little too small for me. So I did make them 8 points, and I don't know, 8 is my favorite number, so 8 always looks good on everything. So I just increased the size for all of them, and then here I'm just typing out all the numbers. It's kind of tedious that you have to do this for every month, but I thought there was going to be like a faster way to do this, but ultimately it's better to just type everything out. There sometimes could be like errors that you could make by accident. That's why you can always double check, but it usually, what do you call it? Adobe doesn't tell you that you made a mistake in the calendar view because they don't know what you're typing. But it's best to double check everything before you export it. So yeah, that's why I always save it before anything, because you're able to make any changes in case. And here I ended up, I think, yeah, I thought I was going to put Indigenous Peoples Day, but, and I'm pretty sure I spelled it wrong, but I was like, this kind of seems ridiculous, because I do put like a script sticker. I ended up putting a script sticker anyway, like for the holidays and stuff, so, and then I have to white it out later, so it's up to you if you like to have it there, but ultimately, for my preference, when I make inserts, I usually don't put the holidays or anything. I just keep it simple, and then I'll put it myself because I rather have it like really cutesy and stuff. So yeah, it's ultimately your preference again. So what I did again is duplicate it as well, and then this is pretty much the look of it. So you can just keep duplicating it and creating those monthlies and dashboards and so forth. So now creating the year at a glance page. So what I did was changing the layout of how the calendar looks. So instead of having the month on the side, I did put it at the top. And I did, what do you call it? Added a row at the top. So what I did is merge the whole entire thing so it's all one together. And this is what it looks like. So of course you don't see the lines. That's why it's best to look at it on the normal setting, or the normal preview area instead of the preview section. So I also wanted to make sure that I had 0.5 inches at the top where it pretty much says the title. So I actually also changed the units. So you go to InDesign. So you there's like a menu there, and then you go to preferences, and then you change the increments, units and increments to inches and stuff. If you made a mistake and you were supposed to click inches, or you want the measurements in inches instead of the other settings, you can always change it. So there's always like a back end to changing things. So what I wanted to do was ensure that the top area, I had enough spacing, but for the guides, it doesn't give you that opportunity or give you that area or for 0.5 inches. So the easiest way to do it is move your margins down. It won't affect anything. It'll just make sure that your margins are split perfectly within that area. So you still have that 0.5. So what I did do is create a text block 0.5 inches wide or tall, and then aligned it at the top of that margin area. So it pretty much lines everything up. I still have 0.5 or 0.25 inches of margin on all around, other than the 0.5 inches on the side. So yeah, it all works out at the end. And what I did have to do was make the columns a little smaller. And for some reason, oh, I know why. If you highlighted a merged box, you won't be able to decrease the width of the column. So you have to make sure that the column is pretty much, or whatever you highlighted is actual boxes instead of a merged box. So here I'm just lining everything up within that area, and then I'm going to distribute columns evenly. And then I'm going to end up distributing the rows evenly. So now everything looks perfectly squared, or try to. So yeah. And then at the top, I just put in the month, and it's actually easier. So if you guys don't know that the calendar, of course, there's 7 days of the week, but if you create 7 days with each of the starting dates, like let's say first January 2020, it starts on a Wednesday. But if you create starting dates for each of the days of the week, and then whatever the 31st goes, it's much easier because you can just copy and paste it and just delete numbers, and voila, you have the perfect calendar, and you don't have to keep typing all the numbers in. So I'm going to show you how I did it for the 2021 calendar. But this is what I'm just testing out for everything. So I did end up just deleting the second calendar because I don't need that. And for this one, I had to type out all the numbers for the other months because obviously I don't have like a backup for this. So here we're just creating it from scratch or from what we had originally, and then we're just going to keep changing the numbers. So in order for that text blocks to be even and perfectly in the center, so what I have to do is create a table. So that's the best method of creating anything centered, because you won't be able to center anything if you don't have a table in the cell, if that makes sense. So what I made sure was that the column or the height of the cell was 0.5 inches. And I also decreased it and made sure that the font was still the same for everything. So what I did was make 2020, and then I entered, and then it gave me a second line, and I put year at a glance. And then I centered it, and then I also centered it within the cell, but I pretty much did that before. And I also increased the font size. And if I increase the box, I didn't take into account that the text box wasn't big enough to hold it, so I just had to increase a little, and then it pops it back up. And I also wanted to make 2020 bold, so I just chose the lemon and milk bold, and now everything looks so cool. And yeah, you pretty much create any layouts on InDesign. You can also sketch it out if you like to, but I usually just do it on the thing because you don't have to waste paper, and yeah, so yeah. So here I just changed all the dates for January, and I'm just going to quickly fast forward this area. So I just pretty much copied and pasted the calendar and then created each of the calendars, or changed the numbers out. So this is what 2020 year at a glance dashboard looks like. I'm just going to make this size smaller, or the screen size smaller. So this is what it looks like, and I did leave the spacing for each of the days that have extra days in the week. So this is what it looks like. and it looks really clean and simple. So of course you can put it on vellum or print it on vellum and stuff. So I do have 3 pages created here. So what I did was delete one, and then you just pretty much duplicate this spread that you created, and here it is. So now you're going to just change the 2020 to 2021. And now I'm just going to go back to normal view because it's much easier to look up the guidelines because the preview doesn't show you the guidelines. So now you're just going to take the calendar view that starts with January, or the start date of January. So 2021 didn't start with, or I don't have a calendar that starts with Friday. So if you created this prior to this, it would be much easier. So you just have to create 7 calendars with each of the start dates. And it's much easier to do that. So here I'm just typing out the numbers for January, and then I'm pretty sure I didn't have to type anything else out, or yeah, I don't have to type anything else out because I didn't have any Friday start dates, which is pretty odd. I don't remember. So yeah. So now for February, since it is a Monday start, I have a calendar view that has a Monday start. All you have to do is just change the month, and voila, you already have February. And you can just delete the days that aren't in the month, or you can just add the days that are, or delete it in the month. So now for February, I have to find a month that begins with a Monday start. And actually, yeah, I didn't realize that I didn't have a Monday start. So I didn't have a Monday start and a Friday start. So what I had to do was duplicate it. But since, or actually, I did have a Monday start. So February, and if it's not a leap year, usually February and March are the same months, but with added days for March, of course. But obviously, you can just copy and paste it, and voila. And I was like, whoa, it just got zoomed in so quickly. So yeah, I just wanted to zoom in just a little bit. So now for April, I have to find a Thursday start. I hope if this terminology is making sense, but if not, you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. I will happily be answering them. So here, October was a Thursday start, so I just had to change the month. And this is pretty much straightforward, that you just have to change the months for each of the days that begin, and you can easily recreate this for each year. And not really have to change the numbers around, unless you want to change the font. Of course you can change the font, you just have to highlight each of the boxes, but of course this is individual, so you have to highlight at least 12 times and change the font. But yeah, it's much easier to do it this way instead of retyping the numbers every single time. When you have the perfect layout already and you know what you want, you can just easily just change the numbers around and change the dates. And here I've accidentally dragged January when I was supposed to drag March. And you just have to duplicate it if you don't have an extra one. And I'm pretty sure I messed up. Yeah, I messed up because April does not have a 31st. So my numbers were off already because I was like, the 30, yeah. So that's when I was like, wait a second. I realized that when I duplicated April and then I added September, and I was like, this does not look right. So yeah. But of course, this is already created, or these numbers or these calendar views are already created. You can just easily just delete it and then delete the number and then move everything around instead of recreating all of this. So here I just put back everything. It's pretty much like a jigsaw puzzle. So what I did was delete April's 31st, and then pretty much May starts on a Saturday. So I did have that for February. So I'm just going to duplicate it, or August. So here I just changed it to May, and then May has the 31st. So now Tuesday, everything's like a day behind, or Yeah, so we're technically June is a Tuesday start, so I'm going to find a Tuesday start, which would be my, so I just had to add my September monthly for June, and since September already has no 31st, it was perfect, and now I have to just change everything else for the rest of the month. So obviously, if you can see, this is much quicker than recreating each of the spread. So once you create it the first time, you can just change up the numbers and the, or move everything around and just change the dates. It's pretty much like a jigsaw puzzle because you're just putting in each of the specific areas. So for the months that I didn't really need, I just deleted them and I can just retype it out if I'm missing a month or something. But if you like, you can always create a separate document with all of these tiles and with the days of the week that's available. Just copy and paste it. So since September and December were the same, I just copied and pasted it or duplicated it, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing the 31st, which I will add eventually. I didn't do it now, but I will make that change. That's why it's best to double check your work before you print and cut or export it. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to click save and then export it later, but I didn't do any of those yet. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions down below, let me know in the comments. That's what I just said. Anyway, this is a pretty long video, so thank you guys for sticking along. I hope to have more tutorials later, so bye guys!